Blast me to the mortal realms. It's time for the Mad Merlins review of Warhammer Age of Sigmar Stormbringer, issue 17 by Hachette Partworks and Games Workshop. Hello everyone and welcome back to another Warhammer Age of Sigmar Stormbringer magazine review, and today we're looking at issue 17 and it is a paint issue. So we get two paints, Abaddon Black and Agrax Earthshade. And as you can see by the front there, we learn about the brutal armies of destruction. So before we get into anything, don't forget to, of course, like the video if you're enjoying the content, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you want to help support the channel, you can, of course, do so for free by dropping a comment down below. Let me know how you're getting on painting your armies. And if you want to help support the channel in any other way, there's of course the Mad Merlin Patreon, where you can support the channel from as little as £3 a month. Help keep the biscuit tub filled, tea in my teapot, and of course paints on the paint desk. So without further ado, let's dive into issue 17. So here we have our issue. So our two paints for this issue are Agrax Earthshade, so a nice muddy brown shade. This is the smaller size pots that they have recently released. It's only 18mm as opposed to the larger 24mm pots you used to get. But at least it's bigger than the old 12mm ones you used to get. That never used to go very far. But yeah, still a valuable paint to anybody's paint pot collection. And we have Abaddon Black, of course, a good basic black. And it will be useful for quite a lot of our models, including the upcoming Cunning Crew. So let's go through our issue then. So we got a nice bit of background information to go through. So we have all about the war clans, learning about the history of the mortal realms of the Age of Chaos, and we have a fold out for the armies of destruction. Painting, we'll have a technique about base coating, and we apply Abaddon Black and Agrax Earthshade to all our models so far. To play our rules, we have battle traits, which help define the battlefield a bit more. We'll have the War Scroll for the Lord of Imperatant, and we have a Lightning Strikes Twice mission to play. So, moving on, starting off then, we have the War Clans. So, the most common flexible military formation in Kruleboyz society is known as the Claw. Formed around 5 distinct elements, 1 leader figure and 4 mobs. It is based upon a taloned hand. After all, even the most dim-witted grot has at least 1 or 2 of these knocking around for quick reference. So we start with the thumb. This is the strongest digit and mark of the cunning tool maker. Represents the claw's boss or shaman. Our index finger, the largest and fightiest warriors in the Kruleboyz claw, are honoured by being members of the jab finger. Next up, we have the middle finger, the most raucous of their number. It is the job to rile up the war clan's adversaries, flinging insults and forcing them to make mistakes. Then we have the trophy finger. So is used for showing off. Usually it features fierce war beasts tamed by the beast breakers. And then we have the light finger. So this is those people in charge of nicking stuff from the battlefield after the battle's all done. It's usually comprised of hobgrots and younger orcs. And on this page we have a breakdown of a war clan. So we got the kill boss here, and he's 4 units there. And then we got, of course, extras that will keep out and get used occasionally. Then we got a couple of different sub-factions within the war clans here. So we got the Cunning Blades, the Big Yellers, and the Skullbugs. Next up then we have part of our history lesson. So this is all about the Age of Chaos. In the Age of Chaos, the glories of the Age of Myth were consumed in a storm of fire, blood, and corruption. Only Azir, Sigmar's realm, was spared the terrible wrath of the Chaos Gods. So yeah, this just details about the fall of the Age of Myth and the rise of Chaos and how they corrupted all the realms. So yeah, so it goes into detail about how each realm was corrupted and how sometimes a specific god would choose a realm. Like Tzeentch was a favour of the twisted tunnels and tainted reaches of the realm of metal. And Nurgle used to like Gairan, as it was a verdant and life-heavy place, and of course he likes to crop life. Of course, even the Skaven like to get around, and they created many of their gnaw holes, which linked to the Horned Rat's foul domain itself within the realm of Chaos. And finally, we have a little bit of information here about Chaos being in domination of the realms and how life was in those times. Moving on, we have a rather extensive paint guide to go through. So we have a refresher course on how to base coat our models. So you've got parts of the brush here, so the bristles, the ferrule, and of course the handle. Technique about thinning your paints, so putting your paint first on the palette, then adding in some water. If it's correct consistency, it should stay pretty solid. If it's too thin, it will run. If it's too thick, you can easily tell if it's too thick. Metallic paints, you want to make sure you slowly add water, as these don't really require too much water to thin nicely. And you can see if it's too thin, as it appears very translucent there. So we have technique about practicing and using your brushes, so covering your large areas and small areas, and even tricky details. How to load your brush, gathering it up and then twisting your tips. And then how to apply the paint, so choose a direction and keep going in the same direction, giving yourself complete coverage. So we do the rule of 3, so 3 coats. So we do first coat, which you can still see some of the base coat underneath. Second coat, you're pretty much nearly there, but a third coat is just a perfect coat to give you absolute full coverage. Being careful about fragile parts, making sure you support them with your finger while base coating, so paint one side, let it dry, flip it around and paint the other side. And of course, tidying base coats, so here we can see we've been a bit messy with the Wraithbone on the teeth, but we've gone in here with a thin brush and picked it out with some red. And keeping your brushes clean, so make sure you give your brushes a good clean off after you've used each paint. If you only have the one paint pot, make sure you clean it out after each time you've used metallics, as you don't want to get metallic flakes in your matte paints. But I have 2 pots on my table, one which has got gold painted on it, so I know that's my metallics pot, and then one pot for my matte paints and varnishes. And then finally, of course, we have base coating layers. So we even have a little sneak peek, because that is Guard of Steel Soul there. We're not getting him until another couple of issues yet. And then, yeah, we have painting of sub-assemblies, reaching hard to reach areas. Painting from the bottom layer upwards, which is a very handy technique. And, of course, a tutorial on painting from dark to light. Personally, I would paint from light to dark. So instead of painting the entire banner and the pole and then painting the Wraithbone over it, I'd paint the entire area with Wraithbone and then paint the pole with brown afterwards. It just makes a lot more sense to me, and it's a little bit easier as well. So into our actual paint guide, we're learning about using shades and applying Abaddon Black to areas of our models. So shades are pretty much watered pigment, and they allow you the ability to add depth to your models. So make sure you load your brush, not too much. So if it looks like it's going to drip off the brush, just run the brush over the top of the paint lid there and let some run back into the pot. But once it's loaded, you can just apply it to the areas you want to shade. So just being careful not to overflow and clog up the recesses too much. So if you do see any pooling, make sure you soak it up with a clean brush. So we're applying Abaddon Black over some of our Stormcast details. So we've got the joints in all the armour to pick out, including the van braces on our Luxor Stormrider model and the beak on the Gryph-hound cloak and the Gryph-hound himself. And we're picking out his collar with black. We're also painting the beard on the dark-skinned guy here with black paint, so it's picking out later on in grey. And then we're using Abaddon Black for the main shaft of the chariot, as well as all the straps and horns and beaks on the Gryph-hounds. And finally, we're applying Agrax Earthshade to anywhere that's got Mephiston Red or Wraithbone so far. And then we have a gallery of our completed models so far. They are starting to look a little bit better now. They are definitely getting more and more complete, and I do like that we're now adding a bit of depth to the areas. And then we're painting our Cruel Boys, so we've got lots of details to pick out on our Swampcrawler Shaman and his pot grot, including the pot that the Shaman is tipping out his potion from. You've got, of course, the pot grot's pot, and the Shaman's cloak, and some of the inside details of the pots and pans as well. Then we're applying Agrax Earthshade over all the red and Wraithbone areas. And that is our completed models so far. So, battle traits are part first of our rules to go through. So when the warriors of the realms join forces, they form coalitions more powerful than the sum of their individual parts. From the rampaging hordes of destruction to bold alliances of order, this combined might is represented in Warhammer Age of Sigmar by battle traits, abilities that reward you for playing with a specific faction. So this goes into more information about all the different factions we're getting over the course of the magazine. So Stormcast Eternals, Sylvaneth and Kharadron Overlords for order, Cruel Boys, Doomspike Gits and Iron Jaws for destruction. So yeah. You know, a couple of tutorials here. So Dirty Tricks is a Cruel Boys faction bonus, and Signs of Storm is a faction bonus for the Stormcast. Speaking of Stormcast, we have rules for our Lord Imperator here. So he's a distinguished leader, he has the Gryph-hound companion, and he's guided by lightning. And here we have how the Guided by Lightning rule works. So instead of being deployed 9 inches away, it allows you to deploy 7 inches away instead. Excuse me. And then we have our battle. Lightning strikes twice. So the Lord Imperator, the 5 Vindictors, and the 4 Praetors. Our terrain. And we have our Swampcrawler Shaman, Hobgrot Slitters, 10 Gut Rippers, and 3 Manskewer Bolt Boys. So we start by deploying the Lord Imperator, and then we have the other units strike in afterwards. So yeah, our usual helpful guide, and of course our victory. Before we look at our foldout, we have next issue. So next issue is the Cunning Crew, a squad of orcs that we get to add to our collection, and a brand new mat, and we also learn about some of the storm hosts. And in issue 19, we have a Garda Steel Soul. We learn about War Magic and Sigmar's Storm. So I think it'll be quite a nice issue to look forward to. So before we finish then, we do have our foldout. So this is all about the Armies of Destruction. The Armies of Destruction do not fight for riches or to please the gods. They fight because it is the purpose of their existence. Nomadic hordes of raiders roam the realms in search of worthy enemies to crush, while crawling creatures slink from hidden layers and pillage and kill. Here we see a roaming band of Iron Jaws as they start a campaign to crush the realms of order. So we've got Stampedes of Annihilation, we've got the orcs here that ride giant boars with armor. We have, of course, the biggest and the strongest of all, the Man-Crusher Gargants. And then we have a lovely fold-out of all the factions there. So we've got the Gargants faction there, the Mega Gargants, the Gatebreaker Gargant, and, of course, the smaller Ale Guzzler Gargants, which we are getting later on, facing off against the Ossiarch Bone Reapers. We have some Ogres, Savage Orcs, and got some spiders there as well. And finally on the back, we have the far-reaching warpaths of the noble, noble? Well, kind of noble. The orcs that are ogres, even not orcs. And of course, it's survival of the fittest as well. So we see an ogre off against an orc and how vicious each of their mounts can be. But that is it for issue 17 of Stormbringer. Let me know what you think. While on the subject of orcs, we also have, if you are a subscriber, you'd have had a special letter, which is the first of our special model packs. And this one is, well, an ogre. So it comes with a single model, the Ogre Tyrant, which I think is a pretty expensive kit, £20–25. But for $9.99 we get it. We get the Classic Tyrant kit. We also have building and paint guides and background on the Ogre War Tribes, as well as data sheets required to unleash the force in a conquest of the Mortal Realms. So yeah, it's very handy, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting this. I do like ogres. It's one of the few factions within the destruction range that I do actually like. Yeah, that's going to be fun to get. But that's it for this video. It was a little longer than I expected it to be, but yeah. So, thank you all, of course, for watching. If you think I deserve it, please give this video a like, and of course, you can subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you next time on another Stormbringer magazine review. Thank you, and goodbye.